our project over jazz in the 1920s. The decade of 1920s marked huge advances in the music industry.
The phonograph record became the primary method of decimating music, surpassing sales of sheet music and piano rolls.
The decade marked the beginning of the independent record companies, smaller operations that weren't afraid to take a chance on music and artists that the bigger companies shied away from.
Toward the end of the decade, radio went from being an inexpensive novelty into a major and inexpensive form of entertainment.
With the beginning of the Great Depression, phonograph and sheet music sales would go down, and radio would become the most important form in the music industry.
By the late 1920s, motion pictures had gone from silent to sound, creating another medium for the sale of sheet music and phonograph records.
Jazz music, which had originated in New Orleans in the 1900s, began to spread throughout the country by the late teens.
As more employment opportunities opened up in the North, especially in Chicago and the Midwest, both black and white musicians from New Orleans moved to Chicago.
Beginning in 1922, Jeanette Records, an independent company located in Richmond, Indiana, began recording jazz groups performing in Chicago.
The first group they recorded was the New Orleans Rhythm Kings, followed in 1923 by King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band with young lion Louis Armstrong on second cornet.
Although commonly referred to as the Jazz Age, and in a retrospect, the era would be more reasonably named the Dance Age, as America went crazy for dances like the Charleston and the Black Bottom, and the music they danced to was played by 7 to 12-piece dance orchestras.
The blues, which had influenced jazz from the beginning, became increasingly popular due to singers like Ma Rainey, Mamie Smith, and Bessie Smith, the latter selling thousands of discs, including a national hit, Downhearted Blues.
From the mid to the late 20s, Chicago prominence as a center for jazz would wane, and New York, already the center of music industry, would be the magnet drawing musicians from other parts of the nation.
At the same time, Kansas City, with its many nightclubs, carabettes, and dance halls, created a haven for jazz musicians in the South and Midwest.
The popular song form, which was a 32-bar piece of music with 4 8-bar sections, became the normal and would continue into the advent of rock and roll.
Songs of the 20s can loosely be characterized as happy-go-lucky rainbow, round-my-shoulder ditties with catchy melodies and relatively simple harmonies.
Some of the big jazz songs in the 1920s was the one that was just in the background called Whispering. Another one was called Wang Wang Blues. Another one was called Wabash Blues. And another one was called Linger a While.
Jazz was very important back then because it gave people something to listen to, and it also reflected towards their lives, and it's still important today, and people still listen to it just as much as they did in the 1920s.